Most people think Russian military tech is all about nukes and tanks, and fair enough. But what gets overlooked is this. The Soviets built the most prolific and battle-proven helicopter program in history. From flying cranes bigger than cargo planes to ocean-landing sub-hunters, even an attack helicopter with an ejection seat. Today, we break down all 28. Let's get into it. Mil Mi-1, NATO, Hare. This is Ground Zero. The Mi-1 entered Soviet Air Force service in 1950 as their very first mass-produced military helicopter. Scout missions, communications relay, medical evacuation. Nothing glamorous, but it proved something absolutely critical. The USSR could manufacture rotary wing aircraft at full industrial scale fast. Once that was established, there was no going back. Mil Mi-4, NATO Hound. The Soviets watched the Korean War closely. They saw the US using helicopters purely for medevac and asked a completely different question. What if the helicopter could deliver the squad and fight alongside them? The Mi-4, in service from 1953, was their answer. A fully armed assault transport, troops in the back, weapons up front. This one design decision would shape Soviet military helicopter doctrine for the next 4 decades. Kamov Ka-10, NATO Hat. While Mil was building for the ground army, designer Nikolai Kamov was solving a different problem entirely. How do you put a helicopter on a warship without eating up the entire flight deck? His answer was the coaxial rotor, 2 counter-rotating rotor systems stacked vertically, eliminating the tail rotor completely. The Ka-10 hit Soviet Navy warships in 1950. Tiny footprint, no tail boom to snap off in rough seas. Kamov would build on this layout for the next 50 years. Kamov Ka-15, NATO Hind. The Ka-15 took the coaxial concept into open ocean anti-submarine warfare from 1956, operating off Soviet cruisers and destroyers in the North Atlantic and Arctic. Picture a compact twin-rotor machine deployed from a pitching warship deck, actively hunting nuclear submarines beneath the Greenland Sea. One of the most quietly menacing Cold War images that almost nobody talks about. Kamov Ka-18, NATO Hog. Simple, coaxial, deployable anywhere, anytime. Soviet military medical units used the Ka-18 for casualty evacuation in areas where nothing else could reach. It was never going to be anybody's favorite helicopter, but it shows exactly where early Soviet doctrine was pointing. Every machine had one clear job: no wasted capability, no wasted weight. Those 5 machines established the philosophical DNA, Mil building big and versatile, Kamov building compact and specialized. Now watch what happens when both bureaus go full throttle.
Mil Mi-2, NATO Hoplite. The Mi-2 came in at 1965 as a light utility helicopter, but the production story is what makes it genuinely notable. The Soviets licensed the entire design to Poland's PZL factory, which built thousands of them for the whole Eastern Bloc. Soviet engineers designed it. Polish workers built it. Every Warsaw Pact nation flew it. That's a supply chain strategy that still holds up as genuinely smart. Mil Mi-6, NATO Hook. The Mil-6 was the largest helicopter in the world when it was built in the late 1950s. Not largest Soviet helicopter, largest helicopter on Earth, carrying 12 tons of cargo internally, or heavy military equipment slung beneath its fuselage. The Soviets weren't building a transport helicopter. They were building a flying freight train with rotor blades on top. Mil Mi-8, NATO HIP. If you remember one helicopter from this entire video, make it this one. The Mi-8 entered widespread service in 1967, and it is, by an absolutely massive margin, the most produced military helicopter in history. Over 17,000 units built, still in active production today, operated by more than 50 countries simultaneously, flying combat missions right now in multiple active conflicts. Troop transport, gunship, medevac, electronic warfare, VIP transport, search and rescue. The Mi-8 does all of it, and it does all of it well. The GOAT conversation for military helicopters starts and ends here. Mil Mi-10, NATO, HARC. Picture a helicopter that walks on stilts. The Mi-10 had 4 massive fixed undercarriage legs, designed specifically to straddle and lift enormous loads from 1965 onward. Military engineers used it to airlift pre-assembled radar stations, artillery systems, and large structures to mountaintop locations completely inaccessible by road. The mental image of this thing lowering a radar dish onto a peak in the Caucasus is one of the most genuinely bizarre scenes in Cold War aviation. Mil Mi-17, NATO, HIP-H. Take the Mi-8, give it more powerful engines, improve its performance at high altitude and in hot weather, optimize it for the export market. The Mi-17 entered service in 1981 and immediately became one of the most commercially successful military helicopters on the planet. More than 60 countries operate it. It has flown combat in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Ukraine. The Mi-17 keeps refusing to become obsolete. Every decade, new buyers show up. Mil Mi-14, NATO, Hayes. This is where it gets genuinely unhinged. The Mi-10, introduced to Soviet naval aviation in 1976, has a full boat hull integrated into its lower fuselage. It takes off from a ship, flies to a target area, lands on the ocean's surface, deploys active sonar into the water, hunts submarines, then takes off and returns to base. A helicopter that floats, that hunts nuclear submarines in open ocean. This is one of the most niche and operationally terrifying concepts ever actually built and put into widespread service. Kamov Ka-25, NATO, Hormone. The Ka-25 became the Soviet Navy's standard ship-borne ASW platform from 1967, operating from destroyer and cruiser decks across the North Sea and North Atlantic. Its coaxial design handled crosswinds and ship motion that would have made a conventional helicopter operationally unsafe. It carried dipping sonar, torpedoes, and depth charges, and did it all from a pitching warship deck in some of the most hostile sea conditions on Earth. Kamov Ka-27, NATO, Helix A. The Ka-27's replacement, entering service in 1982, set an entirely new standard: bigger, faster, significantly more capable, with advanced dipping sonar, magnetic anomaly detection, torpedoes, and depth charges. The Russian Navy still operates the Ka-27 today. 4 decades after introduction, it remains one of the most capable naval anti-submarine helicopters flying anywhere in the world. Kamov Ka-28, NATO, Helix A export. The export version of the Ka-27 cleared for foreign sale. China buys it, India buys it, Vietnam buys it. The fact that 3 major Asian naval powers independently chose the same Soviet-designed platform as their primary shipborne ASW helicopter says everything about the quality of the underlying airframe. Soviet sub-hunting technology now operating across 3 separate oceans. Kamov Ka-29, NATO, Helix B. Strip out the Ka-27's anti-submarine equipment, install rockets, gun pods, anti-tank missiles, and a 30mm cannon. That's the Ka-29, the Russian naval infantry's dedicated assault helicopter from 1985. It launches from amphibious assault ships in rough seas and delivers heavy fire support for beach landings. A fully armed attack helicopter that operates from a pitching ship deck in open ocean is simultaneously the most logical and most chaotic aviation concept on this entire list. Kamov Ka-31, NATO, Helix AW. The Ka-31 addresses one of the hardest problems in naval aviation: airborne early warning without a full carrier. Kamov's solution, fielded from 1995, was to fold a large rotating radar antenna into the helicopter's underside. It deploys mid-flight to scan for incoming missiles and aircraft. It gives ship groups a radar capability that would otherwise require a purpose-built fixed-wing aircraft and a flight deck large enough to operate one. Creative doesn't even begin to cover it.
Mil Mi-24, NATO, Hind, nickname the Crocodile. There has never been another helicopter quite like the Mi-24, and there probably never will be.
In service since 1972, the Hind is the only helicopter in history designed specifically to simultaneously transport troops and provide them with direct heavy fire support. 8 soldiers in the rear cabin, anti-tank missiles on stub wings, a nose-mounted gun, enough armor to shrug off small arms fire. Over 50 militaries have combat operated it. The Mi-24 didn't just change attack helicopter doctrine, it created an entirely new category of aircraft. Mil Mi-25 NATO Hind-D Export. The dedicated export attack variant delivered to Soviet-aligned governments from 1974, the Mi-25 flew combat in Angola, Nicaragua, Afghanistan, and the Iran-Iraq War. In several of those conflicts, it was the most capable helicopter on the battlefield, and its opponents had no effective answer for it. The Mi-25 didn't just participate in regional conflicts, in more than a few of them, it determined the outcome. Mil Mi-35 NATO Hind-E. Take a helicopter with 30 years of combat experience, update the sensors, improve the missiles, add night-capable avionics. The Mi-35 brought the Hind lineage into modern warfare standards from 1989 onward. The Hind family is one of the longest continuously combat-deployed helicopter lineages in the entire history of military aviation. Kamov K-50 NATO Hokum Alpha, nickname Black Shark. Everything about the K-50 breaks convention. In service since 1995, it's the world's only single-seat production attack helicopter, one pilot managing targeting, navigation, weapons, and threat response simultaneously. Coaxial rotors deliver agility that conventional helicopters cannot match. And the part that sounds completely made up, a K-37 rocket-assisted ejection seat. The system blows the rotor blades off the aircraft before firing the seat. The K-50 exists at the extreme outer boundary of unconventional engineering thinking. Kamov K-52 NATO Hokum B, nickname Alligator. The K-52 kept everything that made the K-50 dangerous and added a second crew member to handle the workload more effectively. Side-by-side seating, unusual for an attack helicopter, coaxial rotors, helmet-mounted targeting, ejection capability for both crew. In service since 2011 and combat deployed in Syria and Ukraine, the K-52 Alligator is the most capable attack helicopter Russia currently operates. There is no other production 2-seat attack helicopter on Earth with coaxial rotors. It is genuinely a one-of-a-kind design. Kamov K-52K, nickname Katron. The K-52 adapted for the sea. Folding rotor blades for shipboard storage, full corrosion protection for salt air environments. The complete K-52 weapons package, anti-ship missiles, rockets, cannon, adapted for maritime strike. In service since 2015 and designed to launch from amphibious assault ships, the Katron was built to attack coastal defenses and enemy vessels from the open ocean. It represents the leading edge of Russia's current naval attack aviation capability. Mil Mi-28 NATO Havoc. After the Mi-24, Russian planners asked a direct question: do we actually need to carry troops in our attack helicopters? The answer was no. The Mi-28, entering service in 1996, removed the Hind's troop compartment entirely. That free space went directly to additional weapons, sensors, and armor. The result is a helicopter with no secondary mission whatsoever, a pure, dedicated tank destroyer, built to do exactly one thing extremely well. Mil Mi-28N NATO Havoc, nickname Night Hunter. The all-weather, night-capable variant of the Havoc, Russia's primary frontline attack helicopter in full service since 2009. The defining feature, a mast-mounted radar positioned above the rotor hub, allowing the Mi-28N to remain completely behind terrain, a tree line, a ridge, a building, while only the radar antenna extends above the obstacle to designate targets. The crew never has to expose themselves to return fire. That is a level of survivability engineering that very few systems anywhere have matched.
Mil Mi-26 NATO Halo. The Mil-26 is the largest and heaviest production helicopter ever built on Earth. Not largest during the Cold War, not largest built by the Soviets, largest ever by anybody, anywhere. In service since 1983, it carries up to 20 metric tons internally in a cargo hold that matches the internal dimensions of a C-130 Hercules transport aircraft. Powered by 2 turboshaft engines, the Mil-26 has been used to recover crashed military aircraft, relocate disassembled fighters, and deliver disaster relief to locations completely unreachable by any other means. Nothing else comes close. Mil Mi-38, Russia's next-generation medium transport in limited service since 2014, designed from day one for Arctic and extreme cold conditions, built to operate where other aircraft would be grounded. Modern glass cockpit, digital avionics, higher payload than the Mil-8. Russia is betting the Mil-38 represents the medium helicopter platform for their military over the next 50 years. Kamov K-60, NATO cassowary. And here is the plot twist nobody expected. After building coaxial rotor helicopters exclusively for 50 years, Kamov designed a helicopter with a conventional single main rotor and tail rotor. The K-60, in limited military service since 2002, was built for special operations and reconnaissance work, missions demanding low acoustic signature, high speed, and minimal visual profile. When Kamov abandons the design characteristic that defined their entire history, it tells you exactly how serious and demanding those mission requirements were. From 1950 to today, Mil and Kamov built 28 helicopters, each designed for a specific mission. Mil scaled power. Kamov redefined innovation. Together, they reshaped rotary wing warfare. And that legacy? It's still flying in combat right now.